The wind howled across the Arizona plains at night, sweeping fine grit against the clapboard walls of Ethan McGraw's ranch house. The year was 1867, and the frontier was a land of hard men and harder silences. Inside, the lantern flame wavered, throwing shadows across the bare room. Ethan sat stiff in his chair, a man carved from the same granite ridges that ringed his land. His hand rested near the butt of his coat, more from habit than fear, though fear never truly left a man out here. He watched them, the two Apache sisters, move about his kitchen. They were young, maybe in their early 20s, with the quiet grace of those raised on land instead of boardwalks. They spoke little, eyes lowered, but he could feel their awareness. Every sound in the room seemed too sharp. The scrape of the kettle on iron, the creak of a loose floorboard. Ethan's jaw tightened. The town had laughed when they saw him ride in with them. McGraw's gone soft. One man jeered outside the mercantile, bringing in squaws to cook his beans. But Ethan didn't care for the town's opinion. What gnawed at him was not ridicule. It was suspicion. The sisters had appeared 2 weeks ago, saying little beyond needing work. They claimed their people had cast him out, but Ethan wasn't fool enough to take words at face value. Trust was a luxury he no longer afforded. He'd been a soldier once, in blue, back when this country tore itself apart. He remembered betrayal. He remembered the taste of blood, when men you called brothers left you to die. And so, when the sisters smiled faintly and kept to their duties, feeding his stock, sweeping his porch, tending the fire, Ethan's gut whispered something else. They were waiting, watching, planning. That night the sky split with thunder. Rain pattered against the roof, and the air inside thickened with smoke from the hearth. Ethan leaned back, feigning weariness. His eyes narrowed, the thought settling hard in his mind. He would test them. He pulled off his boots, set them by the chair, and stretched long. "Been a long day," he muttered, voice heavy, as though sleep pressed him down. He let his lids fall, though behind him his mind sharpened. The sisters moved lightly. He heard the rustle of cloth, the faint pour of coffee into tin mugs. They thought he slept. His chest rose steady and slow, the rhythm of a man deep in dreams. In truth, every nerve strained. The fire crackled. Rain whispered on the roof. Then came it, the soft murmur of voices. Not English. Apache. The words curled low and secretive, like snakes sliding over stone. Ethan's blood chilled. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He just listened. At first, the words meant nothing. Ethan knew only scraps of their tongue, picked up during patrols years ago. But tones carried meaning beyond language. One sister spoke softly, almost tender, as though soothing a frightened child. The other's voice was sharper, urgent, laced with fear. Then came a name. His name. Ethan, spoken in the hush of that foreign tongue, but clear as gunfire in his ears. His muscles tensed. The sisters leaned closer, their voices quickening. He caught fragments, sounds familiar enough to set his heart pounding. Numbers, directions, the way one described land, ridges, rivers, gullies. They were talking about his ranch, about him. Sweat prickled his neck. His instincts screamed danger, but then the cadence shifted. Fear thickened in their tone. One spoke of riders, of men coming in darkness. Ethan caught another word, bounty. His mind spun. Could it be? The younger sister, the one with softer eyes, whispered fiercely now. She spoke of gold offered in town, a price placed on Ethan's head. She mentioned a white man, someone who had known Ethan during the war, a man who wanted him silenced forever. Ethan's stomach turned. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming the roof in a steady roar. Inside, the fire popped. Shadows bent and danced like devils on the wall. Ethan lay still as stone, but his pulse thundered louder than the storm. The sisters went quiet for a moment, only the soft rasp of breath breaking the silence. Then the elder spoke again, voice breaking. Ethan didn't need to know the words to hear the sorrow in them. She spoke of family gone, of a tribe broken. Then her voice hardened again, naming his enemies, describing things no stranger should know. How? Ethan's mind clawed at the truth. How could they know about the ambush at Cold Creek, when half his regiment had been wiped out? How could they know the name Caleb Dwyer, once his closest brother-in-arms? No one outside the war should know. No Apache woman should carry those names. The younger sister hushed the elder, urging silence. They fell quiet, only the storm and fire filling the space. Ethan's heart hammered. He had wanted a test. He got more than he bargained for. They weren't plotting his death. They were warning each other of it. And that, he realized with a cold shiver, was worse. The hours dragged, the storm easing to a steady drizzle. Ethan's limbs ached from stillness, but he dared not stir. His mind churned with questions sharp as blades. They knew too much. His past, his enemies. His name carried like a curse through their whispers. When at last their voices faded and their breathing settled into sleep, Ethan cracked his eyes open. The fire burned low, casting only embers. He rose soundless, every motion deliberate. His rifle came to hand, the cold steel grounding him in a storm of doubt. He studied them. They slept curled close, as if the world pressed too hard against them. Their faces in sleep held no malice, only weariness, fear. For a moment, Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered another night, years ago, when he lay wounded in the mud, abandoned by men he trusted. The sister's hushed sorrow echoed his own. But then another memory burned through. Caleb Dwyer laughing beside him, swearing loyalty, only to vanish when the guns thundered. Betrayal left scars deeper than any bullet. Ethan would not be fooled again. He eased back into his chair. The rifle rested across his lap, his gaze never leaving the shadows where the sisters lay. The storm outside had passed, but inside him a storm raged fiercer still. Were they allies, or a trap more cunning than any he'd faced? Their whispers had frozen his blood, not because they plotted harm, but because their secret struck too close. They knew about Caleb. They knew about the price on his head. And that meant only one thing. Someone in town, someone he once trusted, was working with them. The fire hissed, an ember collapsing into ash. Ethan's jaw clenched. Whatever truth the sisters carried, it would come out, and when it did, blood would surely follow. He didn't close his eyes again that night. He sat there, a rifle across his knees, watching shadows, listening for breath, waiting for dawn to pry secrets from darkness. Morning would come, but peace would not. For now, all Ethan McGraw knew was this. His test had succeeded, and what he heard made his blood run cold. The morning came with sky clear as polished glass, but inside Ethan McGraw's chest, the storm still raged. He had not slept. He had sat through the hours with his rifle laid across his knees, watching the faint stirrings of the two women curled near the fire. Dawn touched their faces gently, softening lines carved by hardship. For a fleeting moment, they looked harmless. But Ethan knew better. When the sisters rose, they carried on as though nothing hung between them. One fetched water from the barrel. The other stoked the fire until it breathed bright again. They spoke little, glances flitting toward Ethan, though his eyes never left them. He forced his features into stone, eating in silence, chewing his beans with a slowness meant to unsettle. The younger one, her name was Taya, finally broke the quiet. "You did not sleep?" she said in careful English, her accent thick but steady. Ethan lifted his gaze, hard as gunmetal. A man can't sleep easy when shadows whisper his name. Her eyes widened. The elder, Nita, froze with a spoon halfway to her mouth. Ethan set his tin plate aside and rose slow, deliberate. His boots hit the plank floor like hammers striking nails. He crossed where his rifle leaned, lifted it, and cradled it casual-like, though his grip was iron. "You think I don't know? You think I can't hear?" His voice cut sharp as barbed wire. "You speak in the tongue of your people, thinking me blind. But I heard. You spoke my name. You spoke of gold. You spoke of death." Silence spread, thick and heavy. Taya glanced at her sister, but Nita's gaze locked on Ethan's rifle. "We meant no harm," Nita whispered. "Then why hide your words?" Ethan snapped. "Why speak of riders, a bounty, of men that aim to take me?" The tension in the room was a taut rope ready to snap. Ethan's finger brushed the trigger guard. He didn't want to shoot, but he'd been betrayed before, and he'd sworn never again. At last, Taya spoke, her voice trembling. Because truth is danger. If we tell it plain, you will not believe. You will turn us out, and men will find you alone. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Try me. By dusk, the air between them had thickened into something unbreakable. The sisters confessed little. They spoke of fleeing their people, of refusing a raider's hand in marriage. They spoke of secrets learned in flight, of whispers carried through camps and trading posts, secrets that named Ethan's enemies. But Ethan wanted more. He wanted proof. And when he found none, mistrust festered like an open wound. The night fell heavy. A wind crept in from the east, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke not born of his hearth. Ethan stiffened, nostrils flaring. The sisters exchanged a glance, fear flashing plain in their eyes. Then came the sound. Horses, hooves pounding soft earth. Ethan snatched his rifle, eyes narrowing. Stay inside, he growled, but the sisters did not obey. They rushed to the door just as the first shot split the night. Glass shattered, wood splintered. A bullet tore through the window frame. Ethan ducked low, firing blind into the dark. A shout rose outside, rough voices hollering in triumph. Barn's lit, someone yelled. Ethan's stomach dropped. His barn, the heart of his ranch. Horses screamed in terror. Flames burst high into the night sky, orange licking black. Damn them! Ethan roared, rushing out into the yard. Gunfire cracked from the shadows. Dirt kicked up at his boots. He dropped to one knee, fired once, twice, reloaded fast. The sisters darted behind him, not fleeing but fighting. Taya seized a spare rifle from beside the door. She fired awkward but true, the recoil jarring her shoulder. A man in the shadows toppled. Nita, swifter than he expected, ran into the firelit chaos, her hands tugging at the ropes of panic horses. Flames licked the barn walls, sparks flying like demons. Get back! Ethan shouted, but she ignored him, eyes fierce. She cut the ropes, slapping the animals free. Coughing as smoke clawed her lungs. Ethan shot again, felt the kick, smelled the powder. He heard one raider scream, another curse. But there were more, always more. Shadows flitted just beyond the firelight, gun barrels glinting. Taya dropped another cartridge, fumbled, loaded. Her lips moved in whispered prayer as she aimed. The gun thundered. Another man fell. The barn collapsed in a roar of sparks and smoke. Horses bolted into the night, hooves drumming like thunder. The heat singed Ethan's skin. He spat soot, eyes watering, and fired until his rifle clicked empty. Then silence. The raiders melted away, leaving only smoke, ruin, and the acrid stink of fire. Ethan stood gasping, his rifle limp in his hands. The sisters stood beside him, soot streaking their faces, hair wild, eyes burning with defiance. They had fought for his land, fought for him. For the first time, doubt pierced Ethan's armor. Maybe their whispers had been warning, not treachery. The fire burned itself out near dawn, leaving little but blackened beams and the sour stench of char. The barn was gone, a hollow shell collapsing into itself. Ash drifted on the morning breeze, settling over the land like a shroud. Ethan's body ached from the fight. His knuckles were raw, his shirt torn. But worse than the barn, worse than the loss, was a knot in his chest, a knot wound tight with uncertainty. The sisters tended his cuts without a word. Nita's hands were steady, though smoke still clung to her hair. Taya's gaze lingered on him, not with malice, but something else. Worry, pity, perhaps. You saved my horses, Ethan said at last, voice hoarse. Nita looked away. They were your life. You fought, he pressed, eyes shifting to Taya. Stood your ground like any man. She gave a faint, weary smile. We are not weak. We do not run when fire comes. The words struck Ethan harder than he expected. They echoed truths buried deep, truths of his own running, his own betrayals. His mistrust wavered, but pride held it steady. He could not lay down a suspicion yet, not with blood still fresh on the dirt. What you said, he murmured. The bounty, the name, Caleb. His throat tightened on the word. How do you know him? The sisters exchanged a glance heavy with meaning. Then Nita spoke, her voice low. Because the men who hunt you spoke his name. They boasted of his gold. They called him brother to you once, enemy to you now. Ethan's jaw clenched. Caleb Dwyer, once his closest comrade, his shadow in war, now the architect of this ruin. The weight of it pressed down, harder than the barn's loss. His enemy was not faceless raiders or whispering sisters. His enemy was a man who once shared his fire. He turned away, eyes scanning the horizon where smoke thinned to blue. The sisters waited, silent, watching him with eyes that carried their own grief. For the first time, Ethan saw not just strangers. He saw women cast out hunted, carrying truths too heavy for their years. They had risked themselves for him when they could have fled. And yet, trust was a wall not easily torn down. He gripped his rifle tighter. If what you say is true, then this is far from over. His voice was low, fierce. The fire was just the beginning. The sisters nodded, unflinching. The dawn rose pale and thin. The land bore scars of fire, but beneath the smoke, a harder truth took root. Ethan McGraw was no longer fighting alone. Whether he liked it or not, his fate was now bound to the Apache sisters. And somewhere beyond the horizon, Caleb Dwyer waited. The sun hung low and red in the Arizona sky, painting the land in blood and fire. The smoke from Ethan McGraw's burned barn still clung faintly to the horizon, though 2 days had passed since the raiders struck. He hadn't rebuilt. He hadn't the time. There was a greater fire on the wind, one carried not by flames, but by a name that burned hotter than any ember. Caleb Dwyer. The sisters rode beside him now, their ponies keeping pace with his bay, gelding along the dusty trail that led toward the nearest town. They were quiet, always quiet, but their silence was no longer strange. Ethan had come to understand it. They were women carved by hardship. Each word weighed like silver before it was given. Still, the road stretched heavy with unspoken things. The sisters had risked themselves for him, but trust was a bridge Ethan had not yet crossed. He had learned to survive by suspicion. And yet, as he glanced at them against the dying light, he felt the first cracks in the armor he had built around his heart. The town rose ahead. Squat buildings crouched at the base of a ridge. The saloon lanterns already glowed through open doors, laughter spilling out into the dust like whiskey from an overturned glass. Ethan reined in his horse, his eyes narrowing. "Best you two keep close," he muttered. "Ain't a friendly place for you." Nita's mouth tightened, but she nodded. Taya's gaze lingered on him, a flicker of something unreadable in her dark eyes. They rode in slow, boots clicking on the boardwalks as men turned their heads. Laughter dimmed. Eyes followed. Whispers stirred. McGraw brought his savages to town. Someone sneered near the livery. Ethan ignored them, jaw like stone. He pushed through the saloon doors, the sisters trailing behind. Smoke curled thick inside, mingling with a sour stench of sweat and spilled beer. Cards slapped tables. Glasses clinked. But when Ethan stepped through, the noise faltered. At the far end of the room, leaning lazy against the bar, stood Caleb Dwyer. The years had weathered him. Hair gone gray at the temples, lines carved deep into his face. But Ethan knew him at once. The eyes were the same. Cold, calculating. Once, they had laughed together in the mud, shared bread and bullets. Once, Ethan had called him brother. Now Caleb smiled slow, bitter as poison. "Well, I'll be damned. Ethan McGraw, I was beginning to think the bounty hunters weren't doing their job." The words struck harder than any bullet. The room held its breath. Ethan stepped forward, boots grinding on floorboards. "So it's true. You're the one who set raiders on me." Caleb raised his glass, the liquor glinting in lamplight. "Don't play the innocent, Ethan. You left me at Cold Creek. Left me to bleed out while you rode. You don't remember? I sure as hell do." The memory seared like hot iron. Cold Creek. Smoke, gunfire, men screaming. Ethan crawling through blood, calling Caleb's name, only to find him gone. He had thought Caleb dead. He had buried that guilt deep where whiskey and time couldn't dig it up. But now here he stood, alive, holding vengeance in his eyes. "You chose your side," Caleb hissed. "Now I've chosen mine." The sister stepped forward, Taya's voice sharp. "You sent men to kill him. You brought fire to his land. Caleb's gaze slid over them, disdain plain. And what's he got now? 2 squaws to fight his battles? You picked the wrong company, Ethan. You always did. Ethan's hand twitched near his coat, but Caleb's men shifted in the corners, hands brushing revolvers, eyes gleaming with violence. The room was a tinderbox, and one spark would set it ablaze. Ethan's heart hammered. The sisters waited, tense as coiled springs. The weight of the past bore down heavy. Caleb had been brother once. Now he was a blade aimed at Ethan's throat. You think betrayal makes you strong? Ethan's voice was low, hard. It only makes you hollow. Caleb's smile faded. His hand dropped to his gun. The room exploded in motion. The first shot cracked like thunder, shattering glass and scattering men from tables. Chairs overturned, cards flew, and the air filled with gunpowder smoke. Ethan dove sideways, his coat blazing, a bullet slamming into one of Caleb's men before the man could clear leather. The sisters moved as if the fire had trained them. Taya dropped low, grabbing a fallen pistol, firing into the haze. Nita seized a knife from a card table, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. Gunfire roared in deafening bursts. The saloon turned into a battlefield. Ethan rolled behind a support beam, with splintering inches from his face as a bullet tore through. He fired back. The Colt's kicked steady, a man crying out and crumpling to the floor. Through the haze, he saw Caleb, cool as ice, ducking behind the bar, shotgun in hand. McGraw. Caleb's voice cut through the chaos. You should have finished me back then. You should have made sure I was dead. Ethan's blood boiled. And you should have stayed the man I call brother. The shotgun boomed, buckshot ripping through a table, showering Ethan with splinters. He charged, gun blazing, heart pounding like war drums. The sisters covered him. Taya's shot dropping a man who lunged at Ethan's back, Nita slashing another across the throat when he cornered her. Their courage was wild, unshaken, the firelight painting them as warriors reborn. Ethan vaulted the bar, colliding with Caleb. The shotgun clattered. Fists swung, teeth rattled, glass shattered under their weight. Years of rage poured out in every strike. Caleb snarled, his hands like iron around Ethan's throat. You left me. Caleb roared, spittle flying. Ethan clawed free, his fist cracking against Caleb's jaw. I thought you were dead. They grappled. 2 men bound by war and broken by it, rolling through spilled liquor and shattered glass. Caleb's hand found a shard of bottle, slashing wild. Ethan caught his wrist, straining, veins bulging. The shard pressed close, grazing his cheek. Then came a shot, sharp, clean. Caleb froze. His eyes widened. Blood spread across his shoulder. Taya stood at the edge of the bar, pistol smoking in her hand. Her face was pale but steady. Caleb sagged, the shard clattering away. He stared at her, disbelief etched deep. Then he laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. So this is it, Ethan, saved by your savages. Ethan held him firm, chest heaving. For a moment, he saw the man Caleb had been, the friend, the brother in arms. Then he saw what war had made of him, hollow, vengeful, broken. Ethan could have ended it. His Colt was steady. His enemy was beaten. One squeeze, and the past would be buried. But he lowered the gun. No, he said, voice rough. I ain't like you. Caleb's eyes burned, hatred and pain mingling. Then you'll regret it. Ethan shoved him aside, standing tall amid the wreckage. The saloon lay in ruins, bodies sprawled, smoke stinging the air. The townsfolk who had mocked the Apache sisters now peered from doorways, silent, wide-eyed. Ethan turned to the sisters. They were bloodied, soot-streaked, but unbroken. Their eyes met his, fierce and unyielding. He holstered his Colt. This fight ain't just mine anymore. It's ours. The town whispered. Respect, long withheld, stirred like a restless wind. The sisters, once mocked, now stood as saviors. Ethan, once alone, now found himself bound to them by blood, fire, and trust. As the dust settled, Ethan knew the frontier had given him more than enemies. It had given him a chance to be more than a man of suspicion and silence. It had given him allies, perhaps even family. The saloon doors swung in a hot desert wind, and Ethan McGraw stepped through with the Apache sisters at his side. Behind them lay betrayal, ashes, and blood. Ahead lay an uncertain horizon. But for the first time in years, he did not walk it alone.